Hi, Joe Cerrone. Welcome to this week's Zoom meeting for CAD 230 Introduction to Solidworks. This week we'll be covering Module 4. Module 4 goes through creating objects with a shell and with rib features. There's two labs for it. We have this first lab right here, which basically looks like this object right here. And as we take a look at this part, the basic overall structure for Chapter 6 is to be able to create this geometry using the insert sketch, add geometric relations, base extrude, line, dimension, rib is a new command, shell is a new command. The rest of them we've used before. The drawing is set in inches and the dimensioning standards as ANSI, American National Standards Institute. And we start off by drawing the profile of this part, and then we extrude that with a 5-degree draft angle. And then once we've done that, we can go through and start adding some of these other features. And we can take a look at our existing drawing. If you're new to SolidWorks, what you'll find is it's got this bar right here, and you can dial things back. And so we can show how this part was constructed, and you can do this to any file actually with the boss extrude command. And so here's our sketch right here. If we need to edit it, I can edit it right there. We want to make sure that our sketches are fully defined, meaning that they're all related to the origin and that the SolidWorks software knows where everything is. And then if we take it to the next step, we did an extrude cut. Now, when we look at the extrude cut, this was a little bit tricky because you have to create this sketch on the mid plane of on the front plane. And if you right click on the front plane, you can enable it so that you can see it like that. And then when we look at this sketch, you need to create that sketch right there and then extrude it mid plane. And then we have another extrude cut, and that one's pretty straightforward. We create this geometry on the top shape, and we just extrude it with a taper. And if you want to take a look at the features, what you can do is you can right click on a feature and you can edit that feature. And then you can see that it has a 5-degree taper on that feature. Moving on. To create the rib feature, we have to sketch on this plane right here. And this is a little bit tricky because as you look at it, it's common for some people to use the top edge of it. And so you need to use this edge right here as your face or your surface for that. Once you're able to create that sketch plane, you can then create this circular geometry and this line for the rib feature. And if we look at the rib feature, what you'll find is that that rib feature will create a rib perpendicular or straight down to the next face. And so as we look at the feature itself for the rib, what we've done is we have that set up and we have it set to have a width of the rib of 1/4 of an inch, and we're going to use both sides. In other words, it's going to offset 1/8 of an inch to each side of that geometry, and then it's going to taper it down 5 degrees. We'll apply a 5-degree taper angle to it, and we're not going to get into adding these additional contours to it. And so when we apply this, basically it's just going to extrude that down with a 5-degree taper. Once we've created the rib section, we do a lot of filleting, and then we shell the part. And so that's what the first object is going to look like for that part. I'm going to pause the meeting really quick and then continue once I check for people in the waiting room. Resuming. So this will be lab 4A. And as we look at that lab, that's from our textbook. And then we'll look at lab 4B, which is this other, it's kind of a clamshell feature for a styrofoam box. And so this feature looks like this. This one is pretty tricky. It will take you some time to go through and to work this problem. I found the instructions for it. They're okay, but it does take a little bit of time. I'm not going to walk through this one step by step because it would take a little bit too long, but I'll just show the general overview of it. We start by creating one side of it that will extrude with a taper. Then we'll fillet that part, add some more fillets and rounds. We'll extrude cut a shape out of the bottom, add some more fillets and rounds. Create a boss extrude for this top face and a fillet and some other features just down here on the bottom. And then we'll mirror the entire object. And so once we mirror it, it starts to look like something. And so here, once we've mirrored the part, we'll have two of the sides that are identical. We'll extrude cut some holes in it, or for some parts for the tabs. Add some additional fillets, and then we'll shell the part again. The most common failure is when we try to shell it, if we try to shell it with a value that's too thin for any of the existing radii that are on the part, radii being radiuses of fillets and rounds. And then we clean this up with a few more fillets and just make it according to the assignment exercise. There is a bonus exercise, and I kind of like this one right here. It's this socket wrench. I think we could actually make this into a working socket wrench. There's an excellent video. This was a wrench created by one of the previous SolidWorks instructors at Oakton. He's now teaching the courses over at Elgin. And there's a video for it as well as the content. If I go to the content section and we look at lab number 4, module 4, here's the instructions for it. And so it's a pretty straightforward exercise. We'll use existing sketch and feature commands that we've been using before, but as you go through it, it's really nice to make these little mechanical parts that that have some relevance in creating different parts that that we can. I just like to make mechanical parts, and so as we go through and we create the socket wrench, we'll use a lot of our same techniques with extruding, creating different features on that part. And then we'll create this circular geometry and we'll extrude that up to the next part. And what I like about it is that SolidWorks does a great job of creating these intersections where the part meets other surfaces. And so if we look at that, and then we start to analyze it, we have a very smooth contour here, which is then extruded up to that feature and then creates that intersection. If we go through and we look at how this was created, we start off with the top of the socket wrench and we model that. Everything is pretty straightforward here. We create a plane, which is something that we haven't done before. And so the instructions will show you how you can create a plane. You can create a plane by dragging off an existing plane. Remember, these are planes here, front plane, top plane, and the right plane. And so we're just adding to it. Here's our boss extrude, and that extrude goes, if we look at that, where we can right click on it, edit the feature, we can see that it's up to next. And so that way, when we extrude something, if we extrude it up to a circular geometry, it goes and it follows the curve of that geometry. Continuing on, we extrude the base for the handle. And then we just add these fillets. I like to add colors to it. I'm picking up more on some of the industrial design applications. And as I grade things, you know, it does look nice if you spend a little time to add some color to it. And so what I did was to use the beach ball here to color the fillets a specific color. Add some more fillets to it. And then I put the name on it. I used to work in the shop. I worked at a company and I was a machinist out there and I was new at it. And I put my name on it and I put my whole name on it. He goes, "Oh, you can't put your last name on there. Nobody knows anybody's last name. Just put Joe on there." And he's right. You know, you just want to know where your tools are at. So it's always a good idea to put your initials on something, you know, so that you can find it. SolidWorks is really great about it. And so if we look at, you know, how this sketch was created, what you basically do is you just create a line on the face of the, on this face here, and then you can create the lettering geometry on that line. When you do create the lettering geometry, try to pick a font that isn't overly complicated, that's not real fancy. You want something that's kind of like this. It's almost like a bold font. And so if I look at that sketch, see if it'll let me edit it. Well, I'll have to come back to that. I have a feeling it's just going to glitch on me today. So yes, you want to add something like that. I think I might have added an extra one too to the other side. Yes, I liked putting my name on it, and I thought I'd put something on here too. And this is just an example I like to 3D print these. And so if we 3D printed something like this, you can see the compare and contrast between doing something that's like an engraving that's versus an extrusion. Okay, that completes our lab assignments. This is a bonus assignment. It's an extra 10%. And I'll open things up for questions now. This ends our weekly Zoom recording.